2 hours of push and broom buys a 8 by 12 by 4 bedroom. I'm a man of means, by no means king of the road. Sorry, gang, we've got a great show lined up. Let's just jump in. We've got some wild videos to show today. Should be a wild question period. We'll cross over just into that right in time to get the statements, and so nobody needs to panic. I'm gonna cross over. I keep an eye on when the question period is, I've got that on here. Anyhow, welcome everybody. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. Smash the like. Let's get this going. This is going to be a wild show. Question period is heating up if you pay attention to this stuff. There's a lot of things going on in Canadian federal politics, guys. This is
Hey everyone, quiet down. There's a bulletin on TV.
And now for this news flash.
Can I say something to all the people who thought I was a loser, Chuck?
So you want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong?
I made a mistake, and I'm sincerely sorry.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am.
The world that works.
You know I am. I am Canadian. Come on! I love this country where I am. This land is where I make my stand. The
The one we call Canadian. Canadians.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening. Bonsoir. Shalom. Thank you, Adam. Merci à tous ceux qui se joignent à nous aujourd'hui pour rendre hommage aux victimes et aux survivants de l'attaque terroriste du 7 octobre perpétrée par Hamas. Et surtout, merci à la Fédération juive d'Ottawa d'avoir organisé cette cérémonie solennelle et d'une très grande importance. Thank you to the parliamentarians from all parties who are putting partisanship aside to be here today, including members from my cabinet, Ministers Bill Blair, Mélanie Joly, Arif Virani, Mark Miller, Karina Gould, Jenna Sudds, Terry Beach, Kamal Khera, Randy Boissonneau, Marcy Ian, Richie Valdez, Ahmed Hussein, and Stephen McKinnon, along with MPs Yasser Naqvi, Anita Vandenbelt, Marie-France Lalonde, Julie DeBrussen, Valerie Bradford, Francesco Sorbara, Judy Scrow, Terry Duguid, Lisa Hepner, Ali Essasi, and Joyce Murray. 365 days ago, we were all shaken to our very cores as we, Canadians, woke up on a peaceful autumn morning. Israelis and Jews across the globe were living a nightmare. 1,200 innocents murdered. Young revelers with their whole lives ahead of them slaughtered. Entire communities burnt to the ground. Children traumatized and orphaned. Women raped and mutilated. families shattered and broken, over 250 people forced into captivity at the barrel of a gun. The single deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. I want to sit with that for a second. Almost 80 years since the end of the Holocaust. Almost 80 years since we collectively said, never again. Terrorist organizations like Hamas, like Hezbollah, like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, still seek to harm Jews just because they are Jews. That's not being a freedom fighter. It's terrorism. Vile, anti-Semitic terrorism. And it makes me sick to my stomach. But the trauma of that day did not end on October 8th. What makes this barbaric attack that much more agonizing is the fact that you are reliving this nightmare every single day. You relive it when cowards shoot and smash the windows of your schools and synagogues in the middle of the night. You relive it when anti-Semites wave the flags of Hamas and Hezbollah in the streets of our cities. You relive it when too many of our fellow Canadians downplay or dismiss your pain, telling you that the generational trauma you carry and the anti-Semitism you experience somehow isn't real. You relive it when the term Zionist is tossed around as a profanity, a label for something other than what it truly means, believing in the right of Jewish people, like all people, to determine their own future, a right this government supports and always will. No one in Canada should ever be afraid to proudly call themselves a Zionist. Somewhat ironically, you relive it when you must conceal the location of this very event for fear of violence. Let me be frank. I believe it is unacceptable for any of this behavior to be normalized. It is incumbent on me and on every leader, from premiers to police chiefs, to give anti-Semitism no quarter, to stop this rising hate and to reverse its spread. And yet, in spite of the pain that you live with every day, you've all shown your remarkable resilience. In the hours immediately after October 7th, you came together as a community to stand by each other, to help those displaced by the attacks and the hostage families going through untold suffering. You've shown that the depravity of these terrorists will not break your spirit, that they will not take away your joy. You continue to proudly embody the motto that defines what it means to be a Jew, Am Yisrael Chaim, the people of Israel live. Par-dessus tout, je sais que vous continuerez à vivre ce cauchemar. Vous aurez le sentiment qu'il vous manque une partie de vous-même jusqu'à ce que les 101 otages qui se trouvent encore à Gaza soient libérés. 101 personnes dont la vie est toujours en jeu. 101 personnes qui subissent des tortures, des sévices et des humiliations inimaginables. C'est tout simplement inacceptable. Nous devons mettre fin à ce conflit, accroître l'aide humanitaire destinée aux centaines de milliers de Gazaouis qui souffrent, faire en sorte que le Hamas dépose ses armes et abandonne le contrôle de Gaza et ramener les otages chez eux dès maintenant. Nous devons, une fois pour toutes, rejeter cette violence qui n'apporte que mort et destruction et bâtir un avenir meilleur et plus sécuritaire pour les Israéliens comme pour les Palestiniens. Before I conclude, I want to take a step back, look beyond the horrifying numbers and statistics, and remember the people. Remember Vivian Silver, a Canadian-Israeli women's rights and peace activist who devoted her life to building bridges between Israelis and Palestinians. Souvenez-vous d'Alexandre Luc, un jeune homme qui venait de chez moi, à Montréal, et qui a perdu la vie en tentant de protéger les autres personnes lors du festival de musique Nova. Souvenez-vous de Netta Epstein, un amoureux de la nature très fier de son héritage canadien qui may be a blessing, but more than that. May their memory be a revolution to bring about a world where violent Jew hatred, like the attacks of October 7th, are unimaginable. Merci beaucoup, mes chers amis.
Shalom. Merci. Thank you. Today, our ears are filled with the echo of horror. Our eyes are darkened with the shade of genocidal cruelty. 365 days ago today, we saw exacted upon the Jewish people the worst and most deadly attack since the Holocaust. An attack carried out by a genocidal death cult, Hamas. They deliberately targeted civilians, children. They burned people alive, tortured children in front of their parents. They mutilated dead bodies, and then they displayed their cruel, sadistic, diabolical horrors in posts that they would put on the internet, not even trying to conceal their evil. And why did they do it? Not because there was an occupying force they were trying to expel. Israel had voluntarily expelled itself from Gaza 15 years ago through the incredibly painful and even controversial decision to arrest its own citizens and drag them out of the Gaza Strip into Israel proper, leaving Hamas the ability to govern that land without any interference whatsoever from Israel, but with, of course, total occupation by the terrorist regime in Tehran. And why now? Why at this moment, suddenly, after 15 years? Was it because war was breaking out? Exactly the opposite. It was because peace was breaking out. Israel had just successfully signed the Abraham Accords with multiple Muslim Arab states, with momentum towards a potential deal with Saudi Arabia. Imagine that, the Jewish state signing a peace deal with the home of Mecca and Medina. What a bright new era that would be for everyone except for the tyrants of Tehran, for which such peace would be their worst nightmare. And so, to interrupt the potential of that harmony, they instigated, planned, financed, and coordinated this direct assault, and since that time have unleashed a 7-front war on the Israeli people, a war that has been relentless and cruel. But before we talk further about that, let us take a moment to honor the victims. Let their memories be a blessing. To think of the courageous hostages and their families in anguish. Bring them home. And yet, Jews here at this home are re-victimized again and again. After watching the Jewish homeland torn apart by this genocidal attack, now they see the same motives and vicious hatred carried out on our very streets, with a staggering increase in hate crimes, most of them directed at the Jewish people. Why now? Why now? Now, we might say, well, of course, because tensions are inflamed by the war between Hamas and Israel. But wait, this is not the first war that Israel has had to fight. There have been countless wars where Israel has had to defend its very existence. And those wars did not spill onto Canadian streets. In 2000, it's true. It's true. In 2008 and 2007, 2006, when Israel was forced to fight back against Hezbollah in Lebanon, there was no violence on our streets. We did not have hate crimes overtaking Jewish communities, protests at Jewish hospitals, Jewish homes, Jewish businesses. When there was conflict again in 2014, that did not spill into our streets. So why now? Why all of a sudden has this hatred found such a home here in Canada? Now, some say it's because our people are flawed. The government needs to fix the people, censor the people, better control and corral the people. Well, is it really the people who are the problem? It wasn't the people who appointed Laith Maruth, an anti-racism expert, after he had said, and I quote, "Life is too short for shoes with laces or for entertaining Jewish white supremacists with anything but a bullet in the head. Given a Government of Canada grant, this individual, supposedly, to fight racism." Or Birju Datani, appointed as the Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission, after he wrote, "Terror is not an irrational strategy pursued solely by fundamentalists with politically and psychologically warped visions of a new political, religious, or ideological order. It is, in fact, a rational and well-calculated strategy that is pursued with surprisingly high success rates." The head of our Human Rights Commission. Or an Ontario school that forced children to attend an anti-Israel protest. Kids divided and told to wear different colors to identify their ethnicity in Canada. My friends, this ideology that seeks to divide our people based on race and ethnicity, that has led to these horrifying outbursts of hatred, are not from the bottom up, they are from the top down. And it has been further accentuated by a government that has let in someone who appears to have been let into Canada and given citizenship to someone who appeared to be in a video mutilating a citizen on a crucifix in the Middle East on behalf of ISIS, someone who then went on to try and stage another attack in Canada. Yet another terrorist came into Canada, preparing to stage an attack from Canada to Jews in New York. All of this, well, our tax dollars fund UNRWA, an organization that has helped carry out the attacks of 9/11, of October 7th. So, when they say that the government needs to be the watchman of the people, I say, who watches the watchman? I say, it is not for the government to change the people, it is time for the people to change the government. When I stand here today with you, with my brilliant and courageous heroine deputy leader, the great Melissa Lantsman, and reiterate the commitment that I've made to you and that I've made to our Muslim brothers and sisters. And that is that we will always take one stand. No matter where we are, we as conservatives will say the same thing. I love the Muslim people, and when I go into their mosques, and I do proudly visit their mosques, I tell them I am a friend of Israel. I say the same things there that I do here. We can no longer accept political parties sending one MP into one place to say one thing and another MP into a different place to say exactly the opposite. We will put behind us this ugly ideology that has divided our people, and we will reclaim the country that we knew and loved. And we will do it based on the teachings of the great Wilfrid Laurier. If you don't mind me praising a liberal, he was asked, what is Canada's nationality? And he could not list an ethnicity or a religion. We were already mixed up way back then. We had people from all over the world. So we said Canada is free, and freedom is its nationality. We united around the idea that it didn't matter where you came from, it mattered where you were going. We united around the idea that you could worship God in any way you chose, that you had the freedom to think what you wanted, say what you wanted, be who you wanted, and to be left in peace with your family. And that is the principle that will unite us again. You have my word that I will stand up for freedom here at home and around the world. We will secure our borders to keep terrorists out. We will I will make clear to universities that if they spread anti-Semitism or make Jews feel unsafe and uncomfortable on their campuses, they will not be eligible for federal funding. We will defund anti-Semitic organizations and activists. We will defund UNRWA and give the money to the Palestinian people who are suffering. I will vote against anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations. I will back Israel's right to defend itself, which includes retaliating against those that attack Israel. Israel must be able to prevent Iran from using nuclear weapons. If necessary, that means proactively striking Iranian nuclear sites and oil installations to defund the terrorist regime. We will keep our fists closed to terrorism, but our hands open to peace. We must work with the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, and anyone who's willing to talk and work and build towards a greater peace, including the permanent recognition of the Jewish state's right to exist as a Jewish state now and forever. This is the bright future we have in store. In a land where all the Abrahamic people can enjoy their religious places of worship in peace and in harmony, the way Canada once was, that is the way that we can rekindle the memories of those brilliant souls that we lost a year ago today. I was speaking with Rabbi Mendel Kaplan, and I asked, how do I address the loss and find some glimmer of hope in it? And he said that those we lost can live on this world, in this world, even as they've passed into the next. And I said, how? He said, by carrying on the Jewish traditions that animated them. He said, 1,000 years from now, we can honor them by having an Israel that carries on the traditions that have been there 1,000 years before. We just passed the new year. It's 5,785. So together with the rabbi, wrote a little poem about what Israel will look like in 6,785. Against all odds, Israel stands strong. Friends by her side, where they belong. In 6,785, we'll see her people firm, eternal, free. As Shabbat candles flicker bright, mothers welcome Friday night. Their flames a beacon ages old, 1,000 more this story told. The shofar's call at Rosh Hashanah echoes through time, a sacred drama, awakening souls since times of yore, 1,000 years and many more. On Yom Kippur, in solemn prayer, they cleanse the slate with tender care, repairing bonds with the divine, traditions lasting past our time. Mezuzahs guard each doorway's frame, yarmulkes worn without shame. Stars of David, proud and bright, eternal symbols of their might. The Jewish people tried and true on Simchat Torah, spirits renew, dancing with scrolls, joy undenied. Shema Yisrael, they've always cried. All foes who sought to break their will now lie defeated, cold and still, condemned to history's trash they fall. Forgotten, they're disowned by all. Yet Israel's children stand, keeping alive throughout the land the memory of those who fell in Jewish hearts. Their stories dwell. Unbroken, they'll endure each test. Their timeless faith forever blessed. The culture and tradition never die, and still they'll say, Yisrael Hai. Thank you.
All right, gang, so we're going to cross over into 5 minutes of committee, then we're going to jump to question period. Should be getting kicked off by then. So that's what we're going to do. Let's jump right in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank both witnesses. Actually, my wrist is really hurting from all the notes I've been taking on your testimony. It's been very interesting. Mr. Shekovtsov, is that correct pronunciation, sir? Shekovtsov, apologies. How important is it in supporting the fight in Ukraine to present a united front in countries?
Ukraine is heavily Mr. Chair. Ukraine is heavily dependent on external support for its defensive war. What is more important is the unity that Western nations have exhibited since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And although in Europe there are some problematic cases in some member states of the European Union, still Ukraine heavily relies also on the American and Canadian support. And in this case, the consensus, the solidarity of Western nations for Ukraine is crucial. It is existential for Ukraine's fight for its independence and sovereignty today. And of course, Russia or Russian malign actors related to the Kremlin, to the Russian authorities, understand how important this consensus and solidarity are, and they are trying all they can to ruin this solidarity, to create divisions, to create polarization, to create, to undermine that solidarity and support for Ukraine, and hence the information attacks.
Thank you. And so I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth by reiterating what you said, that there is a strong consensus in support of Ukraine in countries like Canada, correct?
This is my understanding, looking at the some data on support that Canada gives to Ukraine, and I mentioned in my speech, I'm really sorry if the audio quality was not enough, but Canada, as far as I know, is in top 10 of the world's donors to Ukraine. So, of course, this is extremely important.
And I'm certainly very proud of Canada's long-standing support of Ukraine, especially starting in 2014 with Operation Unifier, training the Ukrainian forces, of which a number of my friends in the Canadian Armed Forces went over there to do that. You know, in a country like Canada, though, you know, sometimes our political debates and partisanship leads to political parties accusing other political parties of not being supportive of Ukraine, including some cases from the Liberal Party where they've accused the Conservative Party of being in the back pocket of Vladimir Putin. Is it helpful for our strong consensus on Ukraine to have the governing political party accuse the opposition party of being, like, how does that help build consensus, or is that bringing down the consensus by creating these divisive debates?
Mr. Chair, I think this is not in my position, or it's not for me to give comments on the political parties competing with each other in Canada. I'm grateful to all the parties in Canada that are providing support for Ukraine. And I would like really not to comment on the political debates.
I understand. I'll kind of put this more generally for you. You talked about how one part of the success of the Russian operation is for the consumption of the disinformation and misinformation that they're spreading. And then the second part is, once that has been consumed, when it becomes part of the debate. And so if there is a debate now about which political parties do or do not support Ukraine, when there has been, as you have said, a strong consensus in support of Ukraine, is that kind of considered success by Russia when there's a perception being created that there is no consensus of political support for Ukraine in a country like Canada?
Mr. Chair, I think in this case it is important to highlight that only a full acceptance of a particular malign information narrative produced in Russia can be considered a success, a full success of this malign operation. When there are divisions, when there are some, disinformation narratives spread in the mainstream media, this is only part of success. This is not the only one. I'm sure that, for example, all of you heard that one of the most popular narratives of the Russian propaganda, that Ukrainians are Nazis and Ukraine has a Nazi problem. Just the mere fact that you know about this narrative, it is also part of success, just knowing about this. But it does not mean that the full operation, the entire information operation in Russia has been successful.
That, Canada has a role, like we've sent observers to help out in elections in countries like Ukraine. We see that there are Russian interference in other countries' elections, including the country of Georgia that's upcoming. How concerned are you about Russian influence campaigns in those countries as well, and how do you think Canada can play a role in strengthening those countries' democratic institutions?
Mr. Chair, I am concerned about the developments in Georgia. In September, I published a report on how Russian political warfare also concerns Georgia and what actors in Georgia are essentially amplifying Russian propaganda and disinformation. And the elections that will be held in Georgia late this month, I think that they will be crucial for democracy, not only in Georgia, but also, in a way, in this part of the still what is called post-Soviet space.
Thank you, sir.
As far as I know, Canada is also part of the OSCE and participates in the OSCE ODIHR missions, and I hope that Canada will continue participating in those monitoring missions, including Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We go now to Ms. Demoff for 6 minutes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And just before I start, I noticed yesterday Ms. Dancho said she was going to disrupt today's meeting with bringing forward a motion. It's unfortunate when we have such experts with us for this testimony, studying something that former Public Safety Minister and High Commissioner for the UK called a crisis situation, that the Conservatives would want to stall and disrupt this meeting. So let's hope that she changes her mind and we can actually hear from the witnesses. I'm going to start with Mr. Scott. Beyond Ukraine messaging from Russia, what other kinds of messages was Russia sending through tenant media?
Primary messages that you see in tenant media creative are, I would call, a standard culture war playbook. They are aimed at some of the most divisive issues in Western society at the moment, questions around immigration, questions around LGBTQ rights, questions around the validity of climate change, and of course, as a professor has very clearly explained, an aggressive messaging campaign to try to undermine support for Ukraine. These are consistently reiterated across all of the tenant media channels.
I mean, I know, I think Ukraine is one that we've heard a lot about, but, you know, I'm hearing as an MP in my office where Canadians are expressing concerns about climate change, for example, and we're hearing a lot about that from the party opposite me, immigration, LGBTQ issues, all of those filtered beyond tenant media and their 16 million subscribers to Canadians. And I'm wondering if you could tell us, Mr. Scott, about the vulnerabilities that everyday Canadians have to this kind of messaging.
So I think it's quite significant, especially when you consider the way in which social media platforms function and how they make money and what kind of content they reward and monetize. So when you have channels like tenant media, which are hyperbolic and which are intentionally provocative, what happens, of course, is, hey, human nature, it draws eyeballs and people pay attention to that. And then the algorithm that is curating content on TikTok or on YouTube simply serves up more content of a similar type. The more we see things, the more normal they seem and the more normalized they become in our political rhetoric, and the less extreme they seem to us from a political standpoint that used to have this center line, it begins to move. Because how extreme can something be if it seems like everybody on social media is talking about it? So this is the pattern that we see in digital media marketplaces, which gradually leads towards a polarization of rhetoric. This is extremely divisive, not only because it distorts the representation of public opinion, but also because this is so heavily rewarded. It's not that tenant media relied exclusively on Russian secret dark money to run their operation. They also made a lot of money on advertising from the likes of YouTube and TikTok, who also make a lot of money from this kind of overt, hyper-politicized content without any effort to determine, hey, where is this coming from? Could this be an influence operation? What are our responsibilities in terms of public safety and national security?
Thank you.
All right, gang, we're going to get rid of that because enough of that. Pam Damoff, a brother can only take so much, right? So we are going to drop into this. We've got question period here. It's rolling.
Asked to be a good example to them. The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
10 minutes
Madam
before it
Speaker, there is mounting evidence that the Environment Minister was grossly negligent in his handling of the catastrophic Jasper wildfire, a fire that cost $1 billion, destroyed a third of Jasper, and has resulted in 40% of town residents being left homeless. The Minister was repeatedly warned that Jasper was a tinderbox. And yet, in the face of that, his officials canceled prescribed burns out of concern for political optics. This is scandalous. When the fire began, the minister obstructed the ability of the Alberta government to participate in the response. Proper infrastructure wasn't in place, and more than 50 firefighters were turned away as Jasper burned. Failure after failure after failure under this minister's watch. He has a lot to answer for.
The honourable member for Dartmouth, Cole Harbour.
Madam Speaker, Nova Scotians are smart, passionate, hard-working people. Nova Scotians are seizing our strong winds, turning them into big revenue that will drive our economy and produce good jobs for generations to come. Unlike the Conservatives, we believe that Nova Scotians should reap the rewards of the multi-trillion-dollar offshore wind and clean hydrogen industries. That's why the passage of Bill C-49 represents a huge step for Nova Scotians and Atlantic Canadians, unlocking a generational economic opportunity for our region. But just like the Harper Conservatives of the past, who tried to push Atlantic Canada down by trying to take our offshore revenues, Conservatives are doing it again, trying to do everything they can to block this huge opportunity for Atlantic Canadians. Terrible. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, we won't let them. We're standing up for Nova Scotians and we're standing up for Atlantic Canadians because of our hardworking people deserve to prosper.
Yeah. Good job. Good job.
The honourable member from St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the offshore wind industry is expected to attract $1 trillion in investment by 2040. And with the passing of Bill C-49, Newfoundland and Labrador is poised to lead the way. Just like it did for our oil and gas sector, the Atlantic Accord will now ensure we are the beneficiaries of our wind resources. And that means thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in investment. While Conservatives voted against Bill C-49 every step of the way, we believe in the future of wind. We understand the energy market is diversifying. We support strong and prosperous economy for Newfoundland and Labrador. I will always stand up for Newfoundland and Labrador's future. And with Bill C-49, it is looking even brighter.
Yes. Good job.
The honourable member from Kenora.
Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and what should be a time of joy, family, and celebration is unfortunately become a stark reminder of the economic pain that this government has caused, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are struggling to afford essentials, and that includes food. In fact, 2 million Canadians are visiting a food bank in a single month. The food banks across Northwest Ontario are running out of supplies because demand is so high, and Canadians are paying $700 more for groceries this year than they did in 2023. And we know that the NDP Liberal coalition will in fact quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre if they are given the opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, as Canadian families gather for the Thanksgiving weekend, they should know that only common sense Conservatives have a plan to axe the carbon tax, to bring down the cost of food and ensure that all Canadians across this country can afford to feed, heat, and house themselves once again.
Yeah, way to go, Eric. The honourable member from Sydney, Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, I have tremendous news for the people of Cape Breton. Bill C-49, our offshore wind bill, is now law. Expanding on the historical Atlantic Accords, we have delivered groundbreaking legislation that will enable the construction of offshore renewable energy in Atlantic Canada. While support for this legislation was unanimous in the Nova Scotia provincial legislation, the federal Conservative leader shamefully directed his party to oppose countless jobs, billions of dollars worth in investments for sustainable growth. Bill C-49 sought input from Indigenous stakeholders, local businesses, the fisheries, and environmental advocacy groups to improve and pass this important legislation. It's a shame that no Atlantic Conservative member was brave enough to stand up to their leader, but on this side of the House, we will continue to fight for our environment, build economies of the future, and continue to advocate for Atlantic jobs.
The honourable member from Calgary Centre.
More proof that this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Mr. Speaker, you have ruled that the NDP Liberal government violated the House order to turn over evidence for a criminal investigation into their latest $400 million scandal, effectively obstructing justice. The refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed this House, sidelining our efforts to address skyrocketing housing costs, food inflation, and rampant crime. This is the latest in a litany of financial scandals with this government. The Auditor General's investigation revealed the Liberal appointees at SDTC funneled nearly $400 million taxpayer dollars to their own companies, with over 186 conflicts of interest, while Canadians struggle to afford basic necessities. Will the NDP Liberal government end this cover-up, hand over the evidence to the police, and let Parliament get back to work for Canadians?
That's right. The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
Brianna McDonald, a vibrant, intelligent 13-year-old girl, was abandoned by a system that should have provided mental health care, that should have provided addiction care, that should have provided her with the care she so desperately needed to help her overcome her demons. The system failed Brianna, On August 23rd, Brianna was found unresponsive. She died by overdose, alone in a tent in a homeless encampment in Abbotsford, BC. Instead of providing her with the care she needed, she was given needles and taught how to use them. Brianna had just turned 13. Did the Prime Minister call? No. Did the Minister of Health and Mental Health call? No. Brianna's parents are in Ottawa today. What does the Prime Minister have to say now to the parents who, because of his failed radical drug policies, will never see their daughter again?
The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the hydrogen industry in Canada is expected to be worth $12 trillion by 2050 and help create more than 350,000 Canadian jobs, all the while helping us fight climate change. Together with provinces, Canada's allies, industry, and organizations like the Canadian Hydrogen Association, Canada will succeed from this enormous economic opportunity. Canada is making strides with the National Hydrogen Strategy, Hydrogen Investment Tax Credits, and Bill C-49, the Atlantic Accords Amendments Act. By leveraging our world-class offshore wind resources, we're positioning ourselves as a leading clean energy supplier while boosting our economy and creating thousands of jobs. This summer, I witnessed a game changer at Canada's first operational fuel station for Class 8 hydrogen trucks. Thanks to ITD Industries, Walmart Canada, Nikola Motor, they're transforming the trucking industry with lower maintenance and fuel costs, an impressive range of over 800 kilometers, and best of all, zero emissions. Mr. Speaker, let's all embrace the hydrogen opportunity. It's both a win for Canada's economy and our environment. Thank you.
The honourable member from South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the third State of Canada's birds report was released today by Birds Canada and Environment Canada. Birds are literally the canaries in the coal mine for our environmental health, and previous reports in 2012 and 2019 raised some serious red flags. Today's report shows that some of those concerns are getting worse. For instance, grassland birds have declined by 2/3 since 1970, so something is clearly going wrong in our grasslands. But these reports also show that when we know what's going wrong and we have the political will to fix it, we can see dramatically positive results. Hawks, eagles, falcons have increased by 1/3 since 1970 because we banned DDT. Waterfowl have also increased because we started conserving their habitats. We know all this about bird populations because of the thousands of talented volunteers who go out every day to count birds. These citizen scientists have given us an incredibly powerful measure of the health of our forests, grasslands, and waters. Thank you.
The Honourable Member Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, on October 18th, we'll be underscoring the Night of the Homeless. Once again, we will get together to lift the veil on this reality that affects too many people.
All right, gang, we're going to take an opportunity when we have Beaker up here speaking on behalf of the Bloc Québécois to say hello to the people that are in the room. Welcome to all the new viewers. We're just going through my list of participants. That's the easiest way I've kind of figured how to do this. And so, Ariel Sky, how are you doing? Welcome. Backyard Garden, always a pleasure. Betty Zoom, good to see you. What's up in Niagara? Blue, always great to see you here. Canadian RV, what's up on the road? Chris Murray, you're a funny person. Christine Noseworthy, you are also a funny person. Cindy Remington, welcome. Thank you for coming and watching the show with us. Danielle Sweeney, what is up, girl? How are you doing? Genghis Tron, always a pleasure. Gus Pappas, how are you doing? Hugh Jass, welcome, brother. I am Canadian, what's going on? James Sherwood, how are you doing, Well, brother, what is up? Jeff Vanderkoy, what is going on? Joe Silfat, what is up? My girl Kenzie Kraken, good to see you. Kirk, beam me up, Captain. Mark Maloney, what's going on, brother? Nene of Canada, how are you doing? Roland Halleck, greetings. Ron Barnhill, Scott Campbell, Steve Bloy. We've got Sylvain Robert, tinfoil hat. We should all be wearing a tinfoil hat these days. And Torben Fredrickson. How are you doing? Welcome, gang. We're going to scoot back into the show.
Seriously and list Sammy Doon as an entity under the Criminal Code of Canada for terrorism.
The honourable member from Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker. What is up, Minik? You don't show up in my participants list. I don't know why. I don't care. Hello. It's always wonderful to see you.
Indigenous governments is a forum for cooperation and collaboration on shared priorities. While these leaders represent different levels of government and different regions, they are coming together for the same reason, to build a better future for northern communities. This council is meeting with federal ministers and officials in Ottawa to highlight and advocate for the interests of NPTers. These include advancing reconciliation and modern treaties, protecting our environment while sustainably developing our economy, and building necessary infrastructure like the Mackenzie Valley Highway. Again, welcome to the council leaders, and I look forward to their continued progress in advancing northern priorities. Thank you. Message from Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. I am Canadian. Great to have you in the crew. Good afternoon, Pat Allen. And I saw, who else did I see? Joe Zierma. What is up?
Parliament for a week. Mr. Speaker, you yourself ruled that the NDP Liberals have violated a House order to turn over evidence to the police for a criminal investigation into their corruption. They are defying your ruling, and they have grinded this place to a halt. The auditor said that there's $400 million tax dollars and 186 conflicts of interest in questions. Canadians can get accountability today if they hand over the documents to the police. So what's in those documents, and how bad is it?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I want to start by noting the events in Vancouver yesterday at a protest. We unequivocally condemn those events and those actions. It is absolutely unacceptable to burn the Canadian flag and to chant "Death to Canada." It is also unacceptable to deny and celebrate the events of October 7th and to champion the acts of a terrorist group. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Glad that they've found the courage to condemn something in this House, but whatever is in those documents, back to the matter at hand that I asked about, must be really bad if they're willing to hide the corruption. Months ago, the Auditor General found that the Liberal appointees gave nearly $400 million tax dollars to their own companies, 186 conflict of interest. I'll ask again for the 7th day in a row, will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, give proof to the police so we can get accountability for the corruption and get Parliament back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important I read your ruling into the record because the Conservatives didn't hear it the first time. The Chair, that's you, Mr. Speaker, is of the view that it would be valuable to afford an opportunity for the concerns expressed by the RCMP as well as by the Auditor General to be addressed fully, and I would hope for a mutually satisfactory solution to be arrived at. I believe the best way for this to be achieved would be to follow the usual course for a prima facie question of privilege, that is a referral to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. We're ready to send this matter to committee. When will the Conservatives do that?
Just going to ask all members, please, not to take the floor unless they've been recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the House Leader missed the part where you told them that they're holding this House in contempt. If there is nothing to hide in those documents, then they should be able to hand them over. $400 million to Liberal friends, 186 conflicts of interest from a government that knows really well what a conflict of interest is, all while a record number of Canadians can't afford to eat. How bad are these documents that they would hold this place up for 7 days, defying your order, and to hide the $400 million that they gave to their friends?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're ready for this matter to move on to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, just as you ruled. The only party that doesn't want that to happen are the Conservatives. They're trying to spin out of their own obstruction because they don't want this to go to committee, because what they will hear is expert after expert talking about the egregious abuse of power that the Conservatives are trying to do in this place to override the rights of Canadians. We're ready to move forward, Mr. Speaker. It's only the Conservatives that are afraid of a vote. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in La Presse today, Surgeon Vincent Moore of the Montreal Police Eclipse Squad deplores the fact that gang members are using firearms without fear of consequences. He says, "It's gone completely crazy. I've never seen anything like it in my 18-year career. Nowadays, it's not uncommon for someone to be arrested, and they say, well, it doesn't matter because they'll let me off with just a piece of paper and I'll do it again. They're no longer afraid of being arrested by the police because they know there'll be no consequences. Why have this PM and the Bloc allowed criminals to rule our communities?" The Honourable Minister of Justice. I appreciate the question because it gives me the opportunity to underscore what we've done. With respect to firearms, we've invested roughly $400 million against guns and gangs. Was the Conservatives, like the member across the way, voted against? With respect to administration of justice, yes, there is an issue with bail conditions. When we look at bail, we have to verify if the Crown is contesting it, if there's enough room in detention centres. It's a good question to speak to Legault about. The Honourable Member for Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice has blamed the Quebec Premier on 2 times for something they changed, that the federal government changed, and that's why this legislation is causing so much issues in Quebec. And the Sergeant Giddee of Montreal Police said that people are saying, before this ruling, people on the street would tell us they didn't want to go to jail for long, but now they're getting arrested for guns, and soon after they're back on the street. Why is the government not changing its laws? Because they're crippling enforcement. The Honourable Minister of Justice. First thing, the C-75 has increased sentences for car theft, which he voted against. Second thing, people who decide with respect to bail are judges and justices of the peace who are appointed by who? Mr. Legault. So if you have any problem with respect to that, the administration of justice, you have to speak with Mr. Legault. In terms of space in courts and detention centres, and perhaps some issues with rulings they've made as well. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, enough time has wasted for farmers. All parties voted in favour of Bill C-282 on June 21st, 2023. It was sent to the Senate over a year ago. There is one clause. They've been studying one clause for over a year, all because 2 unelected senators, Paul Boehm and Peter Harder, are dithering because they disagree. 2 non-elected individuals want to overturn the vote of elected representatives from all these parties. They were appointed by the Liberals, who in the Liberal government is going to explain democracy to their 2 friends in the Senate. The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I can assure you that we agree entirely with respect to this question with the Bloc. Supply management is very important to our country, particularly important for how we occupy our lands. We want to be there to support our farmers. And yes, we do expect the Senate to work diligently on this issue and to be sent back as quickly as possible. Thank you. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. C-282. Well, all parties voted in favour of it. This is the second time we've tabled this bill. We've been studying it from all angles since 2020. Remember, we're talking about one clause, and even the Holy Scriptures haven't been scrutinized like this. And now there are 2 senators who think that we're all fools and want to overturn the vote of 338 elected representatives of the people. Enough is enough. Will the Liberals ask their 2 friends to stop blocking democracy? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As you know, we made a big decision as a government to ensure that the Senate to be independent. And since we've done this 9 years ago, we've appointed senators that are independent. I think it's a concept that the Bloc should understand, independence.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby. Finding affordable housing is harder than ever for people across the country. But we've just learned that big property owners use AI software. They've had a secret agreement to increase rents. The NDP tabled a motion to get to the bottom of this story, and the Liberals and the Conservatives blocked this motion. It's shameful. Canadians cannot find affordable housing. So why are the Liberals and the Conservatives profiting big property owners instead of protecting people? The Honourable Minister of Housing. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows full well, it's essential to invest and not just identify challenges. On this side of the House, it's important to advance investment for building affordable housing. It's essential to support communities as well.
Investments to actually get homes built, not simply point fingers and try to identify problems with no solutions coming forward.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
The Housing Minister needs to tell his members to stop blocking the presence of these CEOs in committee. For Canadians who rent, finding a home they can afford is nearly impossible, and these rich corporate landlords are using artificial intelligence software to potentially collude and jack up rents. Shame. The NDP proposed a study to expose rent gouging, but the Liberals and Conservatives teamed up and blocked it. Shame. Canadians
Shame.
deserve a government that protects them. So why are the Liberals, along with the Conservatives, continuing to protect profits of corporate landlords over renters struggling to find a home?
Good question.
Once again, I'm going to encourage all members not to take the floor unless they're recognized. Includes the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby. The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague with the NDP has suggested for the Minister to tell my colleagues what to do at committee. On this side of the House, I can tell you it's my colleagues who tell me to increase investments to build more affordable housing. The NDP have made a point to point out where there may be some challenges where I actually agree that we need to address. The difference is on our side of the House, we actually are advancing solutions to address them. We are putting billions of dollars on the table to build more affordable housing, to build more cooperative housing, and to help nonprofits buy up that low-cost housing on the market to keep it affordable forever. If the NDP want to turn their mind to solutions, I'll listen. Until then, I'm going to continue acting.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
The Liberal government is violating a parliamentary order to hand over evidence to the RCMP. At issue is the Auditor General's findings that officials at SDTC broke conflict of interest laws 186 times and funneled $400 million of taxpayers' money into their own companies. All this at a time when Canadians can barely afford to eat or heat and house themselves. Now, by refusing to accept your ruling, they have effectively paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all other work to address the housing crisis, the inflation crisis, and the crime crisis this government unleashed. Why not end the cover-up, hold the lawbreakers to account, and let Parliament get back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
False, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that member sat in your chair at one point, and I think he would have an interesting perspective if the opposition was not following his ruling as he is doing. I quote, and I repeat, what you said, Mr. Speaker, is I believe the best way for this to be achieved would be to follow the usual course of a prima facie question of privilege, that is, a referral to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The government is willing to do that. We're willing to vote in favour of it. The only party that is holding Parliament up are the Conservatives because they don't want the truth out there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from South Shore St. Margaret's, please, not to take the floor unless recognised. The Honourable Member... Order. The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
If she scrolled up just a little bit more on your ruling on the website, Mr. Speaker, she would see where you ruled that withholding evidence after a parliamentary production order is a contempt of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about Liberal insiders funneling cash into their own pockets. Why don't they want to get to the bottom of this?
Yeah.
And while Conservatives are putting forward real solutions to lower taxes, to make housing more affordable, and to end the crime wave that this Prime Minister unleashed, this government is going to great lengths to keep this information hidden. They're effectively obstructing justice. Why not let Parliament get back to work and hand over the evidence to the RCMP?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not even sure the House Leader of the Opposition believes his own spin. He could scroll down a little bit and see what you asked of him, which was to prepare a motion that you said you would accept to send it to committee to be studied. Mr. Speaker, we welcome that. We will get this studied. Let's get this out of the House. But there's only one group of MPs that don't want that to happen, because what will come out is they are trying to abuse the extraordinary powers of this place, override the rights of Canadians, and get rid of police independence. Mr. Speaker, that's not acceptable.
The Honourable Member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Look, this is a case of $400 million and 186 conflicts of interest that are benefiting Liberal insiders lining their pockets while Canadians are lined up at food banks. The response from the government to a parliamentary order to produce the documents is, first of all, to break the order so that they can bury it at committee, while Conservatives want to make sure that this corruption, this scandal, sees the full daylight that it's deserved, and a referral to Canada's Royal Canadian Mounted Police so they can decide to take a criminal investigation. Oh, wait, we've learned that they are already investigating the latest corruption with these Liberals. Will they turn over the documents today?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, your ruling was very clear. Send this to committee. There's only one group of MPs that are afraid of that going to committee, and we are prepared to vote on that, Mr. Speaker. Let's send it to committee. Let's have that debate. The only group of MPs that are obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't actually want to help Canadians. All they want to do is serve themselves and their own partisan interests. Mr. Speaker, let's get this out of the House. Let's get it to committee so that we can get back to the important work of serving Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
She says she wants to get it out of the House. She wants to get it out of the sunlight, the daylight. They want to bury it at committee. They don't want Canadians to know about the latest example of Liberal corruption. We see that conflicts of interest are very common over there. That Prime Minister broke the law twice. The Public Safety Minister broke the law. The Trade Minister broke the law. The Liberal-appointed chair of this Green Slush Fund broke the law. Every time these Liberals get a chance, they enrich their friends. They want to hide it from Canadians. Conservatives want to get the truth. We want to get accountability, and we want Parliament to be able to get back to work for Canadians. Will they turn over the documents today?
Order. The Honourable Member from the Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We already have the bloc, but now we learn we have the blocker-in-chief, the Conservative, Mr. Speaker. How ridiculous for Canadians watching at home. They are blocking their own motion, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine that? The Conservative are blocking their own motion. Mr. Speaker, we know the Conservative know how to count to 6, so let me explain to them. There's not been one report. There's not been 2 reports. There's not been 3 reports. There's been 4 independent reports, Mr. Speaker, to go to the bottom of this, Mr. Speaker. We got to the bottom of this. Let's get back to work and expect better from all of us.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, according to one senior civil servant, there's a lot of negligence and laziness, and there's also sheer incompetence, and the situation is simply unsustainable. And the SDTC activities are almost at the level of the sponsorship scandal when it comes to the allocation of funds. Canadians' tax dollars are being squandered without consideration, and nothing's being done on the other side of the House to remedy the situation. Will this Liberal government deal with this scandal as quickly as possible? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are waking up as if this was news. We took action quickly and decisively, Mr. Speaker. Not only was there one report, there were 4 presented, 2 by a national law firm and others. We investigated, we took action, and it is time, Mr. Speaker, for this Parliament to resume its work in the interest of all Canadians. Thank you. The Honourable Minister for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, in the Green Slush Fund scandal, the government is openly refusing to provide the documents required for the RCMP to investigate corruption at SDTC, where the Liberals allowed their friends to benefit from taxpayers' dollars, as uncovered by the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, will the Liberals put an end to the cover-ups and provide the police with the evidence so that the Parliament can work in the interest of all Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let's be very clear. My colleague has already clearly explained this, but since we're talking about the RCMP, allow me to provide a comment from the Commissioner. I'd like to underscore that the RCMP is operationally independent and it respects the independence of the police force. This principle guarantees that the government cannot direct or influence the enforcement of law, and that includes members of this House. The Honourable Member for Shefford. All age groups, 79% of the population, are in favour of increasing old age security. 79%. Regardless of your age. You don't have to be between 65 and 74. Everyone agrees. Why is that? Because people respect their elders, because the world shows solidarity, and if we can improve the living conditions of those who need it, well, we're all for it. Even in the chamber, we agree, except the Liberals. When will they listen to reason, show they have a heart, and give C319 royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Employment and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc has never taken one opportunity to support seniors. In terms of the GIS, they voted against it. For dental care, that 14,000 people from Shefford had benefited from. As of today, the Bloc voted against. Only achievement of the member for Gatineau has been to turn his back on the 65 to 74 age group. All he's done is play petty politics when it's time to step up to the plate. He's promoting Liberal interests when it's time to think of our collective interest. An old-fashioned politician with no sense of state. It's not too late. He can still act for the common good. Will the minister finally get his act together, drop the partisanship, and give C319 the royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Employment and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, my track record for seniors and all the Liberals from Quebec members, all our achievements, well, we could compare the two, what they've done at the Bloc. They voted against dental care. They voted against the increase in GIS. They voted against for housing investment for seniors. Every time we made a proposal to help Quebec seniors, the VOC rose together against them. The 35 Quebec Liberals from members from Quebec always voted for these measures. The Honourable Member for Shefford. What's more, the minister offers conspiracy theories to explain why he's no intention of doing anything for seniors. The big bad separatists are preparing a secret plan so you don't get your pensions. Ooh. Old fear-mongering from the 80s. He's talking about winning conditions and independence. So are we. We think that improving seniors' living conditions is a win-win situation and it helps ensure their independence. Instead of scaring people, can the minister get to work for people and give C319 its royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Employment and Seniors. I'd like to tell you, Mr. Speaker, what seniors are afraid of. They're afraid of having their dental care removed, that the thousands of seniors, millions of Canadians have benefited from. And they're wondering, these seniors in Gatineau especially, what the Bloc is doing with the Conservatives in terms of austerity, cutting daycare spots, cutting dental care, cutting health care. The Bloc and the Conservatives, that's the real risk for our seniors and Canadians.
The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Here we go.
There is so much Liberal corruption that they're covering up their cover-up of the $400 million corruption of the Liberal Green Slush Fund. The Speaker ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order to turn the Green Slush Fund documents over to the RCMP for investigation. How much worse is the corruption that the NDP Liberals are refusing to respect the order of the Speaker, pushing aside all the work of doubling the housing costs that the Liberals have done, inflation and crime? We can get back to the businesses at this House if the NDP Liberals just end the cover-up and turn the documents over to the RCMP. Why won't they?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, if we're going to be mansplained to, they could at least try and get it right. But the fact of the matter is that you ruled very clearly that this matter should go to the House committee. If the members opposite would like to read your full ruling, they can go do that, or I can table it in the House for them to read. But I would encourage them to not just cherry pick parts of your ruling, but to actually follow it as opposed to what they're doing. We're happy for this matter to move on, for it to go to committee, for it to be studied. It's only the Conservatives that are holding this place up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Every time I meet with a Liberal, I have to check for my wallet. And they just took $400 million of taxpayer money and funneled it to Liberals in the Green Slush Fund. Why are they ignoring an order of this House? Why are they preventing us from getting to the business of the House, since they won't turn over the documents to the RCMP? If the Prime Minister won't end the cover-up, will at least call a carbon tax election so Canadians can get the Green Slush Fund money back?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, every time I meet a Conservative, I have to search for some semblance of reason. When we talk about what's going on here, let's think about why your ruling said send it back to the committees, Mr. Speaker. Your ruling said that because this has never been done. Because you know what happens normally when you ask for documents in your law enforcement? You go to a court of law. You don't go into a partisan arena such as the House of Commons, because a court of law, a judge weighs things called charter interests, like your expectation of privacy, like your right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. Those are important considerations. We will stand by them every time.
The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, the latest $400 million scandal from this Liberal government has paralysed Parliament. The Auditor General found 186 conflicts of interest, with close to $400 million handed out to corrupt Liberal insiders, all at a time when Canadians cannot afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. It begs the question, how damning is that evidence that they have grounded Parliament to a halt simply to hide the truth from Canadians?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I enjoy the interventions from the member opposite, but I also appreciate his experience as a former Crown prosecutor. He used to work closely with the police, and what he would recollect from his past career is that those police operate independently from him as a former Crown, and certainly independently from politicians. Why do they do that, Mr. Speaker? So that we can have confidence in our institutions in this country. You know who doesn't have confidence? People that live under authoritarian regimes. Instead of emulating authoritarianism, how about he join this side and learn how to fight against it?
Colleagues, please. I'm going to ask the honourable member from Wellington Halton Hills please not to raise his voice when he is not recognised by the chair. The honourable member. The honourable member from Brantford Brant.
Speaker, you ruled that the NDP Liberals violated a House order by withholding evidence regarding their $400 million scandal, effectively obstructing justice, to which the Minister of Justice should be aware of. Their refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all our work to address the doubling of housing costs, food inflation, and the rise in crime and chaos. The time to end the cover-up is now. When will they hand over the documents so that we can get accountability for corruption and get Parliament back to work?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, your ruling was clear to send this matter to committee for further study. The Conservatives don't like that because they'll hear from experts like the former law clerk who says, in my humble opinion, it is an abuse of the powers for this House to use its power to demand and get documents from the government in order to transfer them to a third party that wouldn't otherwise receive them, or to compel the government to give documents to a third party. Mr. Speaker, expert after expert will tell them this is wrong. We are here to stand up for the rights of Canadians every single day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
The Liberals are actively refusing reconciliation and evading their obligations required in the honour of the Crown. This government knew for 7 years that the big dock in Fort Chipewyan is contaminated with cancer-causing substances, and for 7 years they covered it up. Rightfully, families are now worried about their children's health and whether they will lose them to cancer. When will this government uphold the honour of the Crown and work with First Nations to ensure their health and safety?
Hear, hear. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for raising this important point. Safety is my top priority as Minister of Transport. I hear and understand the concerns from the First Nation communities, and it is crucial that remote Northern and Indigenous communities have access to safe and reliable connectivity that they need. I will be continuing to work with the Minister of Indigenous Services on this very important matter. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Churchill, Kiwatanacaski.
Mr. Speaker, we're now over 1,300 days since the Liberals promised to end long-term boil water advisories. But instead of doing that, the Liberals are fighting First Nations in court as we speak, doing their best.
I'm sorry to interrupt the Honourable Member. Colleagues, order. I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Churchill, Kiwatanacaski to start her question from the top.
Mr. Speaker, we're now over 1,300 days since the Liberals promised to end boiled water advisories, but instead of doing that, the Liberals are fighting First Nations in court as we speak. Doing their best Stephen Harper impression, they are carrying on years of colonialism and denying First Nations the right to clean drinking water. Shamattawa, the lead plaintiff, is taking on Canada, one of the richest countries in the world, whose Prime Minister travels the world pretending to be a leader in human rights, all the while denying Shamattawa clean water. When will this government stop fighting Shamattawa to Taskwiak and 58 First Nations and deliver clean drinking water?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, we've lifted 145 long-term boil water advisories together with First Nations, and we're going to continue till we get the job done. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, that member opposite has an opportunity to help make sure we never return to the situation that we found ourselves in 2015 with Bill C-61 in committee nearing study. I hope that we'll see a safe passage of that legislation through this House so that no First Nations person ever lives without clean water again.
The Honourable Member from Buena Vista Burn Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, in the 1980s, the Government of Canada and the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador came together to sign the historic Atlantic Accord. This agreement created an offshore energy sector in our province, delivering economic opportunity and prosperity for generations of families and communities. Now, this government and the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador came together again to strengthen this accord to kickstart a new offshore renewable energy industry. Bill C-49 has now become law, ensuring that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians can lead the world in offshore wind and clean energy.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because with a strengthened Atlantic Accord, Atlantic Canada is set to become a global leader in wind hydrogen. There are are trillions of dollars on the table, Mr. Speaker, and we should all be excited about the good jobs that that's going to create in our region. And think about the kids who now get to see their folks work at home. But the Conservatives spent months blocking C-49. And really, how could the member for Central Coast Bay, Notre Dame, fight against the best interests of his community? Because Conservatives try to stand in the way of progress. But we get it done. And Atlantic Canada will produce the clean energy that the world wants, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Edmonton, Mill Woods.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up, Mr. Speaker. And now we're dealing with yet another Liberal corruption scandal. The Liberal minister from Edmonton misled Parliamentary Committee when he claimed to have had no contact with his business partner around the time of an alleged $500,000 fraud involving someone named Randy. However, when phone records proved otherwise, he changed his story. Why won't he just come clean about this corruption?
The Order. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've stated many times, if a witness goes to committee, we expect that they provide the information that the committee asks of them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I don't know what's going on here.
The honourable member from Edmonton, Mill Woods.
Speaker, it's clear from that answer that the corruption cover-up continues. The Liberal minister from Edmonton first said that he did not text with his business partner, but now that there's clear evidence that he did. It is no coincidence that after months of looking into this matter, there is no other Randy who can be identified other than the Liberal minister from Edmonton. In fact, the minister's own business partner even admitted that the only other Randy ever connected to this company is that minister. So when will the minister finally stand up in this place and admit that he broke the law?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I've stated, if a witness goes to committee and the committee asks them for information, we believe that that witness should provide the information as requested of them, and we expect as much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Regina, Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. In order to get around the Conflict of Interest Act, the Liberal minister from Edmonton seems to have hired someone known as the other Randy to manage his fraud-ridden medical supply company. Well, just like the other Randy, there should be an other Prime Minister to run this government. When will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so Canadians can finally have an other Prime Minister?
Hear, hear. Great question.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All of us come to this place because we want to serve Canadians. The Liberals on this side of the House want to be able to deliver important measures for them. But we know that we need to be able to earn their trust every single day. What we see from Conservative members of Parliament is that they think they've already won the next election, Mr. Speaker, but that's not how elections work. We all have to have the humility in this place to work hard for Canadians. It's up to Conservatives now to determine whether they want to do that work or whether they don't. Let's get to work. We're ready to do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lille, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, you yourself decided that this Liberal government had violated an order of the House to hand over evidence to the police to investigate the latest Liberal scandal involving $400 million. Parliament is completely paralysed by Liberal corruption. Canadians are counting on us to do something about the high cost of living, the crime, and the budget chaos that has been impoverishing them for 9 years. When will this Liberal government stop obstructing justice so that we can finally get back to the work that will help Canadians eat, house themselves, and live in dignity, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, for Canadians tuning in to question period today, they might be wondering why the Conservatives are obsessed with an organization that is no longer operational. The CEO has resigned. The board has resigned. So here's the question today, Mr. Speaker. The issue is that the Conservatives don't like your order. Why not? Maybe in committee we will find out some new things. On this side of the House, we believe in justice, and on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we will always defend democracy. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. We've been hearing a lot about asylum seekers these days. What we hear is not always well thought out, though. This makes us forget the main problem. The number of asylum seekers in Quebec exceeds our intake capacity. We are not able to offer services to these people, and they are living in poverty. And there are provinces that could help them, but they're refusing to help. The only humane way to manage the record influx of asylum seekers is for everyone to do their fair share. And yet, provinces totally refuse to help. The federal government has to take action. This matter is under federal jurisdiction. What is the minister doing right now to get things moving? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees. Mr. Speaker, the member is right. This is an area of shared jurisdiction with the federal government. We need other provinces to help and to welcome asylum seekers. All provinces do need to do their fair share. We are working with provinces who are not in agreement because we need to be humane and treat them well. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. No actions being taken. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, we don't have any more classrooms for the children of asylum seekers in our schools. We don't have teachers for the classrooms that we don't have. We don't have enough food at our food banks. We have a housing crisis. As we speak, though, there are new people at Montreal's Trudeau Airport applying for asylum. They will join the growing ranks of victims of all these crises I just listed. The provinces are doing nothing, the Liberals are doing nothing, and the Conservatives are hiding. Mr. Speaker, what will it take for Canada to do something? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, there is a shortage of teachers in Quebec and in the rest of Canada. That's not new. Asylum seekers are not the reason there is a teacher shortage in Quebec. I wonder whether the member read the letter that I sent to my Quebec counterpart, Jean-François Roberge. There has been progress, though.
Yellowhead.
After 9 years, NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, time is up. This radical environment minister ignored experts who warned Jasper faced a devastating wildfire if nothing was done. His officials discussed canceling prescribed burns for political optics, and now we've learned 50 firefighters and 20 fire trucks were turned away as a third of Jasper burned. Thousands are homeless and nearly $1 billion in damage. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Environment stand up and apologize to the people of Jasper for his failure?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite knows that the discussion between those Parks Canada employees was to determine whether or not they would do prescribed burns or mechanical removals. He knows that, they know that. To try and insinuate that because they didn't want to do prescribed burns, we did nothing is simply false. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we invested 40 times more in forest fighting capacities around Jasper than they did when they were in power, Mr. Speaker. And the company he talks about has no relationship with Parks Canada. They're a company that worked for the Alberta government. Happy to give him the number of the Premier in Alberta if he needs it.
The Honourable Member from Red Deer-Lacombe.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. The latest revelation, 50 firefighters and 20 fire trucks were turned away from Jasper National Park just before the town burned. These brave firefighters were ready, willing, and able to fight these fires, but were ordered to stand down. So now the only question that remains is, would the minister categorize the results of his leadership in this as incompetence or negligence?
The Honourable Minister for Official Languages. Colleagues, the Honourable Minister.
Mr.
Speaker, thank you very much. And my honourable colleague has heard from the Minister for Parks Canada. That company in question was in the employ of the Government of Alberta, and the matter was resolved. Mr. Speaker, I have been in regular contact with Mayor Ireland and his council, as have other members in this government, other ministers, other MPs. Mr. Speaker, we are working with Mayor Ireland, his council, and Jasperites every week to make sure that Jasper comes back better than ever before, because that's what Albertans and Canadians expect of us.
How long is Fergus just going to stand
the honourable member from Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, 4 years ago, Parks Canada put out a tweet that said they would be installing a sprinkler system to protect the Jasper town site. Even the minister's own officials seem to know that water is better at stopping fires than his carbon tax, yet there is no indication that these sprinklers were ever installed, despite a tender notice being posted in 2021, 3 years before the devastating fire. Can the minister confirm how many permanent and mobile sprinklers were operational and deployed in Jasper to save homes and businesses? Just the number, please, even if it rhymes with zero.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, instead of spreading disinformation and misinformation in this House, Mr. Speaker, I actually went to Jasper, and the sprinkler system has been installed by Parks Canada in collaboration with the work that we've been doing with the City of Jasper. I'd be happy to show him where it is in the city, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, it is so important for members to only take the floor, so not only that we can hear the questions and answers, and I'm also referring to the Honourable Member of Lakelands, please, is we only take the time when we have the microphone to speak so that we can all hear, especially people who require the use of translation. It's being respectful for our colleagues to making sure that they can hear the questions and they can hear the answers. The Honourable Member from King's Hants.
Speaker, Stephen Harper referred to Atlantic Canada, and I quote, a culture of defeat. When the Conservatives were in government,
the Honourable Member, colleagues. Colleagues, the more time that I'm spending up on my feet, the less time we have for questions. So I'm going to ask members, please. The Honourable Member from King's Hants from the top, please.
Speaker, Stephen Harper referred to Atlantic Canada as, I quote, a culture of defeat. When the Conservatives were in government, when they amended the Atlantic Accords, they put our region's interests in the back seat. Just ask Bill Casey. As it relates to Bill C-49, our government has worked with the Government of Nova Scotia. We've worked with Newfoundland and Labrador because the legislation represents billions of economic opportunity. The Conservatives stood in the way every single time. Can the Minister of Housing provide an update to this House about why this bill matters for Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question and for his advocacy for the economy in Nova Scotia. There's a few reasons we got involved in politics. Creating good jobs at home and protecting the environment are among them. The behaviour of Conservative MPs from Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador in this file is absolutely ridiculous. You have to ask yourself why they oppose good jobs at home. I expect it's because it protects the environment too, and their leader has told them they're not allowed to talk about climate change unless it's to visit school kids and tell them carbon dioxide is just plant food, nothing to worry about. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is going to make a meaningful difference, create good paying jobs on the East Coast and protect our environment. I wish Atlantic MPs on the Conservative
The Honourable Member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Yesterday, on October 7th, while burning the Maple Leaf, Sami Doon terrorist sympathizers openly called for death to Canada, death to the United States, and death to Israel. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, sadly calls for death to Canada, and our allies have now been normalized. Sammy Doon operates as an arm of a listed terrorist organization in Canada. Will the Prime Minister protect Jewish Canadians from homegrown extremism and list Sammy Doon as a terrorist organization?
The Honourable Minister for...
What is up, Charlene Hopper? Always a pleasure to see you. Harry Taint.
That we both condemn what happened yesterday on the streets of Vancouver talking about. And that's why we will always condemn any form of anti-Semitism. And I'm convinced that everybody in this House will condemn any form of anti-Semitism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Toronto, St. Paul's.
Mr. Speaker, in March of this year, Sammy Doon paraded through my riding to intimidate our Jewish community. Now we see videos of Sammy Doon members in our streets calling for the death of Canada. Long live October 7th, and calling the Hamas terrorists their heroes while they burn the Canadian flag. This government has done nothing to put a stop to these pro-genocide, anti-Semitic, anti-Canadian mobs who threaten our Jewish communities nationwide. Will the Prime Minister commit to protecting our Jewish communities and label Sammy Doon a terrorist organization?
Michael? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those actions that have been taken place in our streets are wrong. We condemn them full stop. Any form of anti-Semitism is wrong. This is precisely why, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety had already referred the listing of Sammy Doon to our national security advisors and asked for an emergency and urgent review. Mr. Speaker, we've already taken action, but we know this issue isn't political, and it's a shame that Conservatives only stand up when they think it suits their political advantage.
Colleagues, these are very important questions and very important answers. I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton, to please not speak out of turn and allow the questions and answers to occur uninterrupted. The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
If they took action, they would have listed them already. So if burning a Canadian flag, if calling for the death of Canadians, if fomenting hate in this country, and most of all being a front for an already listed terrorist organization is not enough to put them on the list, then what the hell is it going to take for them to ban them?
Very quickly, before we go to the answer, I'm just going to ask the Honourable Member to withdraw the unparliamentary language. The Honourable Member. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to an issue as serious as this, we are not going to play politics with Canadian safety. But when it comes to listing of terrorist entities, the members opposite know full well it is not a political decision. It is based on the national security services of this country, but it's precisely why the minister had already sent it for an urgent review, understanding that this hate is unacceptable in Canada.
Colleagues, I've asked the all honourable members, please, not to take the voice. I'll ask the honourable member from Thornhill who had a question, had an opportunity to speak, and could also speak again, I'm sure. Please do not speak out of turn while other members have the floor. The honourable member from Halifax West.
My old town.
Parliament recently passed Bill C-49, which will create an offshore wind energy sector in Atlantic Canada, in my region. This will mean jobs, investment, and clean energy. Despite all this, the Conservatives opposed C-49.
Why is she speaking in French? Halifax West is not an area that speaks French. It's fake as hell, just like oh my God. That gold got to me early in the show, guys. Pissed off.
The Honourable Environment and Climate Change Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the energy transition represents 400,000 more jobs in Canada by 2030, and the offshore wind sector will be a $1 trillion industry. This equates to hundreds of thousands of jobs in clean energy. But these jobs are not guaranteed. In order to create them, we need an ambitious climate plan. That's why we passed Bill C-49, which will allow for development of offshore wind energy in Canada. Unfortunately, the Bloc has joined forces with the Conservatives to oppose renewable energy. Our government will fight to take advantage of these economic opportunities and to create these jobs, even if the other parties are turning their backs on the fight against climate change.
The Honourable Member from Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, new data reveals that 1 in 4 Canadians are forced into precarious gig work. And under the Liberals, the cost of living has exploded while wages have fallen behind. More than ever, workers need and deserve more power, protection, and pay. And joining a union is the best way to get that. So while Liberals continue to undermine unions and Conservatives want to tear them down, New Democrats will always be Canada's only Labour Party. So will this government support the NDP's plan for sectoral bargaining so that gig workers can benefit from a union card?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, whether it's sticking up for replacement workers, whether it's doubling the union training investment fund, Mr. Speaker, this is the most Labour-friendly government in the history of our country. We are union proud. We are union friendly. We're going to continue to make sure that we grow this economy from the bottom up and the middle out, and that means with good union workers.
The Honourable Members from South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, after a summer of wildfires that destroyed thousands of hectares of forests in the iconic city of Jasper, the Liberals are planning to cut funding for emergency services. And to make matters worse, this government has failed to train even a single firefighter in 5 provinces. It's their job to protect communities, but they're letting people down. Now, we know Conservatives cut services all the time, but why are the Liberals risking Canadians' lives just to help their bottom line?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from the member opposite, but it's absolutely not true. We have invested significantly in emergency preparedness. In fact, we have trained over 1,000 firefighters, which also includes Indigenous firefighters as well. We increased equipment to the provinces and territories, and we're working collaboratively to making sure that they have all the resources necessary to fight the wildfires that are being devastated by climate change. Thank you.
Chers colleagues, I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of Dr. Heather Lank, parliamentary librarian, who will be retiring at the end of next week. Dr. Lank first joined the Federal Public Service.
All right, gang. They're saying their congratulations to somebody. I don't know. It is so frustrating to watch Karina Gould. I have a tough time stomaching that. Like, between her and Greg Fergus, it is a lot to watch, guys. Like, here. Come the fuck on. Jesus Christ. All right, here. We're going to find where we left off in the last.
I'm going to switch to Mr. Shakovtsov, and I probably got it wrong, but you've written extensively on the influence that Russia had through social media on French President Macron, as well as German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Are you seeing that kind of influence here in Canada and our current leadership in the government?
Mr. Chair, I think I should say that Germany and France are the main targets of the Russian operations in Europe, and for North America, it's still the United States of America that is the primary target. So Russia, I can't say that Russia is, going around the West and interfering in all the elections. They do have their limits where they can interfere, where they have resources, where they maybe even have allies to interfere. In some countries, it's very difficult for them. So in a way, Canada is not a priority for the Russian operations, although the fact that so many.
I only have a minute left. On that, though, if we are seeing Russian influence through tenant media on climate change and immigration, for example, and then if you have political parties that have differing views, is that not going to influence Canadians' perceptions of those political parties, given the disinformation that's put out there?
You're absolutely right, of course. All the content that is produced, say, in English language, targeting the West in general, this will necessarily almost automatically have influence on the Canadian audiences. This is something that is impossible to stop, this influence that goes from one audience to another. And also on climate change and, as my colleague said, also on LGBTQI issues and et cetera, and immigration. So although Canada may not be the primary target, still the information operations produced and targeting Western audiences will also target other Western nations, including Canada.
Thank you. On y va maintenant, Madame.
Over to.
Yeah, so we're just going to wrap up, guys. Pretty long afternoon watching Greg Fergus. We watched Karina Gould. Again, I enjoy watching this stuff because it's interesting in ways, but we've got other videos to make and more things to do. There's other committees to cover and more of these Trudeau, Jagmeet, Liberal NDP coalition scams. That coalition is still a real thing. Not one detail has changed. I thought that when Jagmeet initially came out, I remember telling my mom, she was like, oh, look, that's going to be something for your channel. And I'm like, no, that's a ruse. He's just fooling Canadians, trying to distance himself in any way before those last by-elections. My name's Aaron. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been a fun afternoon, even despite Karina Gould. What do you guys think about the black and white? I kind of like it. I live in this house. It's like 250 years old. It's ancient. And I kind of like the black and white. It mixes it up. That is it. We're wrapping up for now, guys. We're going to go out on... the way we came in. We're going out that way. This is it. You guys have a good evening.
Hey, everyone, quiet
Maybe
down.
we'll
There's
do
a
another live
bulletin on
show.
TV.
And now for this news flash. Can I say something to all the people who thought I was a loser, Chuck?
So you want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong?
I made a mistake, and I'm sincerely sorry.
Oh, hello. Do you have...
Hey, Lisa, I didn't mean to miss you today. Lisa Simpson, what is up?
I know this place is where I am.
Again, I try to say hello to everybody on here, try to make everybody feel included while we learn about these Canadian federal politics. Sometimes I miss people. It gets busy in the room. Lost Ark, what is up? See if we can see some of the people that we might have missed. Arthur Oates, what is shaking, baby? Backyard Garden, Blue, Chris Murray, Christine Noseworthy, Danielle Sweeney, Derek Summers, Digger D, Gordon Meyer, what's up, brother? Gus Papas, Harry Taint, James Vahey, Joe Sulfat, Kenzie Kraken, Kim Burley, what's going on, girl? Lisa Simpson, sorry if I missed you earlier, Lost Art. Mark Maloney, Roland Halleck, how are you doing? Ron Barnhole, Sylvain Robert, and True Blue. What is going on? Ain't that true? Anyways, guys, we're wrapping up right now. We'll be back definitely tomorrow, same time, same place. We start the show at 2:30 AST. By 5 after 3, we're into question period. We don't miss that. We've just got a little intro segment with some of the more interesting things that we saw from the night before or the morning of. That is it. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, subscribe, share, get notified. It is important to get notified, gang. Like, believe it or not, it's a big deal. Like, as far as whether you get to see my videos or not, YouTube won't show them to you if you're not notified, subscribed. That's the way it goes. Anyhow, if you are notified, though, they can't stop that. Well, they probably could, but they don't. Aaron, Canadian Looney, what a wild, twisted Tuesday. Catch you this evening. We've got more videos coming up. Yeah, that's it. Go to the channel. Watch some of my newer videos. Some things are heating up. We've got a couple of videos that are going out pretty hot. There's probably a reason for that. Anyhow, gang, till tomorrow or the next show. Thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about the, and we have to show this last poll. What were the results of this last poll? 3% of the audience thinks that Karina Gould is fine. 76 votes. That means like 2 people voted for her, or like that she's fine. Kind of funny. We try to have fun here. We're out, gang. Thanks for watching. Just got to sit here and kind of wait for it to end. What are you going to do?